Sounds like a Dr. Pepper, not a water. Not tired of winning yet. Thank you, baby.
Nicer for you.
Thank you. All right. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon, coming at you guys Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on October 7th. Since the last time we spoke, which was Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, we had a couple things where I got it correct and a couple things that I did get wrong. The first thing, the correct side of things, Judge Kavanaugh has been appointed as Justice Kavanaugh. So now we have a new justice coming in. He's already been, he had a secret meeting where he took his oath and got in. I bet. I guess not sure on that one at all. So it's great to see that he got appointed in some aspects. It's great to see that allegations without corroborating evidence are not enough in order to stop people in 2018. The blood oath. Free Spirit Press, welcome in, man. I shouldn't gender anyone, but welcome in. Thank you for joining. So yes, Judge Kavanaugh, now Justice Kavanaugh, already being sworn in. We should expect that tomorrow during the oral arguments that Justice Kavanaugh will be there and starting to impart his views into the Supreme Court. It's that truth. It's that bit of objective truth that is getting both the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party in an aggressive stance. They both are trying to utilize this. Democrats are utilizing this as they pushed over a woman's allegations because it was a woman, and so the misogyny of the Republicans need to be taken out. So they're utilizing this in order to try to invigorate the Democratic base or the left-wing voters in order to get them out. It's a great plan. Hold on 1 second. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So the Democrats are trying to use this to energize their base, get them out voting, and hopefully be able to change up and take out conservative seats. Now, of course, the Republican Party is doing the same exact thing. A lot of Republican senators said, look, we can push through the fecal matter, if you will. We can push through all of this and be able to get an honest man in. And so they're both utilizing the Judge Kavanaugh as a midterm pawn. We've seen where both sides obviously are trying to make this more of a political statement than everything else. What Free Spirit Press? Which piece were you talking about? Are you talking about the bump stocks? Are you talking about the budget? Which one? National 0090. Welcome in. A lot of people did miss this, right? And so the big takeaway, the drone issues. Ooh, I may have missed the drone issues. You talking about the drone strikes policies? So there was what's the topic right now? We're just going through an overview of what's been going on around Judge Kavanaugh or Justice Kavanaugh. And so both parties are trying to invigorate. No one wants to have honest discussions about what's actually going on. I've seen a lot of people still to this very day pushing false stories, pushing false narratives. Cops can shoot down civilian drones. Wow. So this correlates perfectly in with this Judge Kavanaugh thing. So we can look at Judge Kavanaugh and we can see where President Trump, we can see where Justice Kavanaugh in the past has had opinions that go against the freedom, against the liberty of the individuals. For example, being able to collect phone metadata without a warrant was one of the things that Judge Kavanaugh had actually excused in one of his opinions, and it was his justification that helped build up the Patriot Act and help align that to be accepted and constitutional. But it's this idea that the state should be able to take these freedoms, take away your liberties, for your safety as the overall. Now with this drones issue of cops being able to shoot down civilian drones without a warrant, that once again that says, look, you guys are free to walk among the land, but anything that goes airborne, it is obviously a criminal intent in nature. Therefore, even if you want to go and take a drone and just go around a lake, then the officers, all they have to do is feel as if you're doing something wrong and be able to take it down any way possible. It's this weird idea where we're seeing this narrative being pushed where the state gets more authority over the people, the Fourth Amendment, right? Your ability to be free and to be private is going away. This is a huge monumental issue, and it needs to be addressed. Where we see the Republican Party usually grow the government is in the way of taking away rights and liberties in order to provide safety. So we see it going that way. And then for the flip side, right, obviously with the Democratic Party and the ways that the Democratic Party wants to growing things on the social safety net, on providing for all people, providing more tax dollars for educational services, infrastructure, Planned Parenthood, etc. It's extremely dangerous for the virtues and values of what the country was. But that's not to say that both sides are not complicit with this, which is why I continually push you guys to go check out the Libertarian Party, go check out the libertarian views, go check out somebody who actually cares about the individual. Because if you look at a lot of the videos of people providing pushback against the police for unwarranted searches, usually those are libertarian-leaning people, and usually they have a strong grasp of how searches and seizures are supposed to work, and it's good. Whenever it comes to you and your ability to be free, oftentimes people want the pragmatic, they want the in-depth view on what really is constitutional versus what is not, and trying to, thank you for your press, trying to look at this in a clear and objective manner. Things like DUI checkpoints would not actually be something that is constitutional. That there are Supreme Court justices in the past, the majority opinion did authorize a DUI checkpoint, but at the basis, at the core of what a DUI checkpoint is that if you're traveling down a certain route, a certain road, a certain highway, that you are allowed to be stopped and to be inspected. So your car, which is a part of your effects, part of your privacy, gets to be inspected for merely being in an area. And so it's a huge credibility issue. But these are things that you see within a police state where you're able to, where the police is able to justify within themselves, to have a feeling, to have a questioning concern, and therefore they have the ability to go in and check this out. Generally, welcome in. Mad Dog Nightwalkers, welcome in. So it's looking at this entire situation. I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much, Free Press, or Free Spirit Press. Thank you. I appreciate anyone who's sharing it out on YouTube. I thank you so much. I'm working on building up the YouTube platform. Obviously, I'm still quite new with the YouTube world, sitting right at 1.7 thousand followers on Periscope. So still kind of low numbers over there, but we're building up nice and slow, but we're doing it all natural. So it's being shared by you guys. It's being syndicated by you. So anytime you guys are helping out, that is greatly, immensely appreciated. So getting back to that discussion, right? Something as simple as a DUI checkpoint would not be something that would be deemed okay, but because we weigh out the liberty of being able to be free and sovereign within your vehicle driving down the road, and we worry about the safety. A lot of people have justified the removal the Fourth Amendment in that aspect, or to limit it in that aspect. And I think that that's what we're seeing a lot with this Judge Kavanaugh thing. Is not a lot of honesty there about what Justice Kavanaugh said with regards to the Patriot Act. And so we've accepted it, and we said, look, 9/11 was horrible. We all agree that many thousands of people dying in one instance, it's horrible. And so the justification of the safety, you could feel like it was warranted or it was acceptable at that time. But over time, we just see, look, that was a safety, that was liberties and freedoms that were being taken away from all Americans indefinitely, because we know that the government, once they've attached themselves, latched onto a right or liberty of the people, and they're able to diminish it, there's no letting it go, no letting it come back to the people. And that it's just one of the fundamental issues of government as a whole. The problem with the Libertarian Party is they preach freedom but vote Democratic. They vote. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, because I know there are plenty of left-leaning libertarians that do vote Democratic, and I know that there's plenty of right-leaning libertarians that do vote Republican. So there is the wide spectrum, right? Here's one of the common misconceptions of what a libertarian is. A libertarian is not somebody who is excluded from right to left thinking, right? It's somebody who believes on being towards the bottom half of the grid, if you will. So at the top of the grid, your positive y-axis numbers of a normal quadrant graph, those are all authoritarians, and libertarians are the bottom half. So they're within the bottom half quadrants, and then usually sitting around the middle and lower on there. So yes, you will have Democratic libertarians as well as conservative libertarians or Republican libertarians. But I wouldn't look at the fringe groups. I would look more at the try to stick away from the libertarian policies of before. Try to look at the libertarian ideology, try to look into that, and then see if you can come in and make a change yourself, because that is the most volatile party that is out there, because so many voices are accepted and allowed. I didn't like or want Homeland Security Department or Patriot Act. I appreciate that, Brickman. Only vote Democrat only if you are sick of winning. It's true. It's interesting that dichotomy has been created, that if you vote Democrat, you're tired of winning, and so you want to lose. I think it's an interesting ploy, and it certainly has resonated with enough people. Lord Titus, welcome in. And that resonating motto really is hitting for a lot of people that are looking at Trump, whether it's objectively or just looking at him for borderline comedic relief. I disagree that a majority are just liberals. I disagree with that. A lot of them, a lot of libertarians and core values are liberal when it comes to social practices, social norms. You're fine. We only want what's best for America. And I mean, honestly, Texas, you hit a point that should be made for all people. I think that anyone in politics wants the best for America. Now, it's about the ideology that they espouse and push. That is what determines if it will be better for America or if it will not. And that's really where the political discussion is. I don't think that anyone out there wants to change America for the worst. Now, I think that they can definitely want to make a change for America, and in their intentions it's for the betterment. But when they push things like democratic socialism, communism, Marxism, postmodernism, any of the left radical fringe ideologies, those are the things that really tear away at what could make America better, because it's providing power to the government. The government never does. The government never provides a service that we want them to at the quality that we need. Huge fundamental issue. Yes, what's best for America is to adhere to the Constitution. I can agree with that in a lot of ways. The fringe left definitely has moved to communism. I agree with the fringe left. I wouldn't say the left as a whole, because there are plenty of socialists who are just not indoctrinated communists at that point. It's much similar to me being a minarchist. I am basically one step away from anarchism. But I still believe in a state. I still believe in a federal government state. I still believe in borders. I believe in protecting a country. And I still believe in a justification and a necessity for some form of a government to be able to provide for us and protect us from enemies, foreign and domestic. But the idea that I am a step away from anarchism is the same as socialism being a step away from communism. They might be just ignorant of their movement. Absolutely. So one of the other big stories that happened last week, and this kind of did get a little bit of a cover up from the whole Kavanaugh situation. That was really the wall to wall coverage. That was what everyone was hearing about, and that's where all the vitriol, the energy was coming from. And what may have been missed for a lot of you was this young individual named Jackson Cosko. He was, I believe he was like 27, 28 years old. And the reason why he was noteworthy or newsworthy was because he's being accused of multiple crimes for allegedly doxing Republican senators during the Brett Kavanaugh, Christine Blasey Ford hearings. Some of the people that he had doxed, and if you don't know what doxing is taking your personal and private information and posting it online. And so with that being your intent, it doesn't mean that somebody has to collect the information. It just means that the information has to be applied to a public platform for people to be able to reach. And what the allegations are against him is that he was taking Republican senators' information, private information, whether it was their home address or their phone number, and posting these on WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks. No, not WikiLeaks. Wikipedia. Sorry, their Wikipedia page, not WikiLeaks. So yes, he was 27 years old. Here are the charges, and I want to go through these because there's one that really stands out to me, and I haven't seen very much corroborating this one. He was initially charged with making public restricted personal information. So that's the doxing. Witness tampering. That's the one that I'm concerned with how that one actually plays out in a legal sense. Threats in interstate communication, unauthorized access of a government computer, identity theft, second-degree burglary, and unlawful entry. I have not. And so what we see here, right, with the doxing, we know that because it was senators such as McConnell, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, and Lindsey Graham. All this vitriol, and the next thing you know, somebody shows up with a softball with an AK. Yeah, it was discussing that whole situation. Unauthorized access of a government computer. So he was on Senator Harman. I think it was Harman. He was on one of the other senators' computers, which was not a senator that he had worked for in the past. Identity theft by being on another computer. Although I saw reports saying that he was utilizing his own account, so I'm wondering if the identity theft was gaining access or his maneuvering around to get to said computers. And so that may be where the identity theft comes from, second-degree burglary and unlawful entry. So identity theft and unlawful entry could be tied together. Second-degree burglary, just breaking into a place, is considered burglary, and so that would be the second-degree burglary there. So this guy, he's getting hit hard. And it looks like it's going to be, I believe it was 33 years for the federal charges, another 16 years or 15 years for the burglary, and half a year, so 6 months, for one of the other charges. So he's looking for 48 and a half years of charges against him. And so he's looking to spend a heavy majority of his life. So he's 27 years old now, looking to spend almost 50 years. So he's looking to get out after the age of retirement. So this really in effect is is a life sentence. And I think that this is something that we need to look at. Hey guys, it's not good to dox people. Hey guys, it's not good to be vitriolic against people. It's not good to be such a disgusting individual that you find this to be an effective way of going after people. There's reports talking about Jackson saying F you to the president and being just all kinds of hateful, basically following in the footsteps of what Maxine Waters came out and publicly said to show that all Republicans, anyone of the Trump administration, needs to make it be known that they're not welcome here. So we can look and see how all of these pieces are playing together. We can see that we have angry members of Congress that are saying disgusting things, right? Why aren't there riots all around the country from Nancy Pelosi? Why we need to tell everyone they're not welcome here from Maxine Waters. We've seen that. We've seen some of the activist groups coming out and just endorsing punching Nazis, punching people on the right, attacking people, destroying property and everything else. And the mainstream media is being complacent, not really denouncing this in a strong and meaningful way. And so now we have a guy that comes out and starts doxing people, makes it more easily accessible to go after these Republicans. And the response is borderline silence from the media. They don't care enough. They don't want to push this out there and show that, hey, look, there is catastrophic results when you act in this manner. If you are this filled with hate and you actually take actions, you can kiss 50 years of your life away. That's a message that needs to be heard, because obviously being civil to one another and in a large capacity has not resulted in a more civilized country. And from what we've seen from a large swath of conservatives is that, hey, maybe it's time that we stop being civil. How about it's time we stop taking the high road and we start playing the same games against them? We start going off with these allegations. Words suddenly mean actions, and everything else. And so it's not that we're building up our society. It's not that we're taking our society to the next level. We're actually stooping it down to another level. We're lowering ourselves. We're being unbecoming of what the American experience was supposed to be in order to punch back against the cons or punch back against the libs. And we got to stop. We got to stop. If you see somebody out there advocating for it, if you see someone on YouTube, you see someone on Periscope, you see someone on Twitter, you see someone on Facebook, even if you agree with everything that they're saying, the idea that they're going to use the threat of violence or actually commit acts of violence against somebody else or their property or their things, we have to stand united as Americans and say that is not acceptable. We will not tolerate this. We will be bigoted against this. Those people who think violence is acceptable, we will not be accepting of your views or of your actions. This needs to be heard. This needs to be a stand. This is if you want to be involved with political activism in any capacity, these are the things you have to stand against. You have to stand against the continual division. Point it out and say, look, both sides are wrong for pushing this division even further. And when you see individuals acting in that way, stand up, stand against them. Then when you stand against Antifa, yes, absolutely, I stand against Antifa. I denounce Antifa every time we speak about Antifa, because even though they call themselves anti-fascism, they use fascism in order to push their anti-fascism. They justify, just like what they did in Europe when they were first forming, which was in Europe. What they would do is they would vilify the opposing side and say, look, they're just fascists, and they would go and actually justify their acts of violence against others. So absolutely 100%, I denounce Antifa, I denounce the alt-right, I denounce communism, I denounce socialism, I denounce any methodology that requires the use of force in order to change their political opposition. That's called terrorism. I don't endorse that. I would much rather live in a society in which ideas are what changes the minds of people, changes the hearts and minds of people, not who can commit the worst act of aggression against another. I I don't see that making a benefit for the society to see this group is just stronger, so they kick the other group's ass. Now they're the winner, right? That's pushing us towards mob mentality. It's pushing us towards democracy. It needs to be denounced and needs to be denounced by both sides. Who do you think will go up against Trump in 2020? All right, so we'll segue a little bit into this. So who do I think will go up against Trump in 2020? Are you asking who do I think is the Democratic nominee, or who do you think are going to be the main big key players coming up in 2020? But they hate Americanism and capitalism. Yeah, so they hate the culture that was created by Americanism. Booker is going to be one of the contenders. Kamala Harris will be a contender. Who is the woman from Hawaii? She may be even a contender. We'll see them. We'll probably see Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton decide to throw in their hat. Hirono. Yes, thank you. Hirono may be thrown in her hat. Just looking at the optics of what she was doing during the Kavanaugh hearing and seeing some of the squandering that she's been doing. It may be 2020 or 2024 that she decides to run, but it does look as if she's trying to work a ramp up in order to be at least noticed on the national platform. But I think, honestly, there really isn't too much to worry about. I think that really and of course, Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren wants to go. This was a story that broke probably a week and a half ago. Elizabeth Warren herself was talking to a news agency, and they were like, "Hey, are you going to run in 2020?" And she's like, "It's not off the table. It's something that I've been thinking about." So imagine Pocahontas coming out and actually running. How great that would be! And I mean, the betting lines on how long it's going to be until she drops her Native American history. In order to be scrutinized on it against and be challenged out or called out for it and challenged on the stance of she is not part Cherokee. The Cherokee tribe does keep they keep a very meticulous record of how their family trees work, and she's not on there. Kamala Harris is attractive, but probably a little too young. Kamala Harris probably has a decent shot for the Democratic frontrunners. Because she was the Attorney General of California, and although she sucked there, she got a lot of support. Now that she is the senator of over there, and she still is managing to rile up enough people, get people. I'm uninformed. Oh, fantastic! Thanks, Mike. So she does a really good thing for a prosecutor, but a really horrible thing in the way of objectivity. And that is that when Kamala Harris, when she'll ask things, she'll paint a narrative, she'll paint a picture. And when you look at during Judge Kavanaugh, she was talking to him, and it was about, did you take these people's letters and read them? Read the Bible for once. What does the Bible have to do with any of this? Mike, you got to make some sense. And so Kamala Harris, what she would do is she was like, so do you know anything about these letters? And he would say, no. Well, do you know that this, and this, right? And she will just ask a bunch of questions. She'll push them down this path and is basically leading questions, borderline assertions. And then once it gets down to the point in which she can ask for clear and concise questioning on it, she just drops it and leaves it in. What are you talking about, Mike? Mike, I really need you to correlate things a little bit better than just coming in here saying I'm ignorant and I need to read the Bible. That's amazing. A centrist should be in power. I disagree. That's the middle of the path or the middle of the road argument, and that's a logical fallacy saying, look, there's two extremes, and so if you go to the center, that's the best way to go. I completely disagree with you, because if you look at it from a fundamental issue of, all right, so one side says that there should be no government involvement with social safety nets, and the other side says that there should be government involved with social safety nets. The middle of the ground doesn't exist. So a centrist on this would not be, you couldn't find somebody that was a centrist on that idea, because either it is or it isn't, right? That's a binary choice. And then you can actually contrast on the ideas of where it goes on the sliding scale. You mean a centrist and a case-by-case politician? So somebody that's on the center on every case by case, being in the center. As I just described, they can't. There's no difference between. There's no way to be a center between having it and not having it. Thank you. I appreciate it, Breakman. I appreciate the compliment. For those of you on YouTube, because I like the good compliments. You're not ignorant and a lot better informed than most people. Well spoken too. That's important. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And so looking at the Democrats, they have their chances. They have their opportunity. Ms. Kasha, welcome in. They have their opportunities to try to push somebody out there. The problem really is going to be is that as long as the economy stays strong like the way that it's been, there really isn't going to be an opportunity for a Democrat to come into office. It's just not going to be there. Now, what the other factor in this will be is the midterms coming up in November. So if the midterm goes in the way of the Democrats, you're going to see the Republican base get riled up because of that. On the flip side, if the Republicans maintain, so let's say let's go run the four different theories or four different situations. So the first one, if the Republicans run away, so if they gain seats in the House, they gain seats in the Senate for this midterm, what that's going to do is create a lot of false confidence within the Republican Party, and that may be playing that'll be placing some urgency on Democratic voters for 2020. It's going to be hard in order to fight against that big overwhelming support if the Republicans run away with it. If the Republicans have basically a non-shift, it'll be a much smaller wave of enthusiasm coming from Democrats. That's probably right now. That's what it's looking like is going to occur. Is kind of staying the same, not much change. Tracy in Alaska, welcome in. And then if the Democrats are able to pull, I really don't see them pulling from the Senate, but if they're able to pull from the House, what you're going to see is the opposite effect. We're going to see the Republicans use 2020. We're going to see Trump get reelected. We're going to see, hey, look, is the Democrats' fault that nothing was happening in the second half of his first term? And so it's going to be that line of reasoning that's going to get Republicans to keep Trump in office and everything else. It will be interesting to see the way that goes through. So, and then obviously I would say the least likely is that a Democratic sweep in midterms. So let's just say they come in and they take out 20 seats in the House and they take 3 seats away in the Senate, and really just pull away from it all. This will be a monumental blow against the Republican Party. It's going to be hard for them to rile up the base in order to get over that. I think that the Democrats in that instance would certainly have enough motivation in order to ensure that in 2020 that they get taken out. So if you're a Democrat, get everyone you can to vote. If you're a Republican, get everyone you can to vote. If you are an objective person, keep on listening to me. Keep on trying to find the truth in it all. Try to see what the media is not providing you, and be as objective as you can when it comes in 2020. But have as much of a backstory, have as much information as you can in order to be as an informed voter as you can be. I think the GOP will have someone run as an independent. Of course, there's discussions about the GOP sending in an independent. There's discussions about libertarians actually putting up somebody decent. It's going to be interesting. Somebody mentioned Q. I'm not a huge Q guy. I'm not against Q. I'm not in favor of Q. I'm not going to go deep into that. And it's how the independent vote will work, how the libertarian vote will work. That's going to be a huge thing. I hope that I just want the 10%. I just want the 15% vote for the Libertarian Party. Allow them to come in for the debates. Allow them to actually get a third voice out there during the campaign trail, and allow for the American people to hear another voice, to see another side. I think that would be beneficial for us in the long run. I think it would be great. But we'll have to wait and see if the Libertarian Party is just going to push up somebody like, oh geez, what is his name? Bill Weld and Johnson. Gary Johnson. So are they going to push another Gary Johnson, which doesn't really get a lot of outside libertarian support? I think that's the way that they're going to go. Too corrupt to allow a third party. I agree they are too corrupt to allow a third party, but that doesn't mean that the Libertarian Party gives up. We will continue to fight to be viewed, to have an optic, to be heard, because I think that's important for the future of the individuals in this country. Now, another big story that was missed during this Judge Kavanaugh debacle during the entire situation was that the review, or not the review, the budget. The budget had expired and got replaced. Rand Paul is a principled man. Sometimes he votes with the party in order to advance the party, to protect the party. I disagree with sometimes when he flips, but I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. I'm not one to flip on him like what we've seen from a lot of libertarians, and that is, hey, he voted in favor of Kavanaugh, and they didn't want to give his decision on it any views. Didn't want to look at it. Didn't want to read it. Didn't want to actually know anything about why Rand Paul voted in favor of Kavanaugh, but just wanted to hang him right with the rest of everyone else. So, like I was saying, with this with the budget being passed, what we are seeing now is a continuation of increasing the deficit, of increasing the spending, not cutting spending, increasing the spending. So they're not getting as much money from the people. The populace is not paying as much. We all know about the tax cuts. They're working to make those permanent, but so they're taking in less money and they are spending more. Now, if you were $21 trillion in debt, any economist, anyone who I will answer that question in 1 second, Kevin. Anyone who works in finances and lifestyles and helping out people with debt would know that if you're $21 trillion in debt, the best way to get out of debt is to stop spending your money. Don't jack up your revenue. Stop. Markedly slow down your spending. Of course, this is a message that is unheard by the senators and members of Congress. The horse has left the barn. Yeah. So the federal budget deficit was $782 billion in 2018. So $116 billion more than the shortfall recorded in 2017. So $116 billion more was placed on our debt, or on our deficit, hurting America at a faster rate. If not for those shifts, the deficit of the year would have been $862 billion, 162. But this was adjusted by the timing of certain payments that would have otherwise been due on a weekend. So it was a little bit of a timing issue, and so that actually deflated the deficit numbers by a little bit, just in the way that the numbers are collected. Now, when we were talking about the tax cuts, one of the things that I had mentioned to everyone was that when you cut taxes, there is a possibility, there is the capacity in order to increase your revenue. And that is basically, if I'm taking $1 from everyone whenever they make a transaction, and I cut that off and I say, now I'm going to get 90 cents, right? If I have 10 people who are paying $1, right, that's $10 that was collected, but now I have 10 people paying 90 cents, and somebody does an extra transaction or two, now I've collected more money by taking less from each transaction. Now, total receipts were up by less than 1% in 2018. So there was a small jump in the spend, or in the revenue, but that was only $13 billion more than 2017. So we had a $13 billion increase in the revenue, but we had still lost 116. So overall, what we saw there was $103 billion difference between increase in revenue and an increase in deficit. That means we're pulling further and further away from paying off this debt. Now, if you guys remember, there's two things that I wanted to point out. The first thing was that on the campaign trail, one of the promises from President Trump was that by the end of my second term, I will have paid off the national debt. We will be free from a national debt. The further away that we go, the more debt that gets applied to this, the more likely that this was not a promise made and a promise kept, but a promise made and a promise broken. That's going to be a huge issue. It's going to be a huge issue that's going to be propagated, and distributed by the Democratic Party against Trump when it comes to this 2020 election. Expect that one to come up. As long as the spending keeps going out and you cannot repay $21 trillion. Actually, we could. So here's how you do this, right? If you look at the revenue and you look at the spending of the government, so the government collects in about $3 trillion each year. And we spend about $4 trillion each year. So at that rate, we have $1 trillion that's being spent, or that is growing onto the debt each year. Now, if we were to take the $4 trillion and we go, all right, we're not going to spend $4 trillion, we're not going to spend $3 trillion, we're not going to spend $2 trillion, we're going to cut our spending down to $1 trillion. Now you have $2 trillion that are in excess, essentially, and those can go towards the debt, right? At that rate, it would take 10 and a half years if you can cut your spending down to half of $1 trillion. Basically paying for nothing but the military, paying nothing but the judicial side of things, and paying Congress and paying for the required branches of government by our Constitution. If we got it down to $500 billion or to $250 billion, we could pay it off in the 8 years that President Trump was in office. These are things that are not occurring. The possibility is there, the likelihood of it happening. You have a better expectation that the government is going to wake up and want you to be a free person than to expect that to occur. For 2020, he needs to get it in the right direction. But the problem is that it's grown so immensely that his promise to be debt-free, his promise was not to reduce the debt. His promise was to be debt-free by the end of his second term, that this is just something not achievable. And looking at the way that this entire budget went out, if we recall all the way back to April, I believe it was. Yeah, so back in January, February, March. Back in March, what we saw was we had the giant omnibus bill, the omnibus bill that shut down the government, that caused all these issues, that was over $1 trillion over 6 months. I think it was $1.8 trillion over 6 months. What we saw there was when President signed it, what he said was, I will never sign another bill that increases the spending again. I will never sign another bill that increases the debt that we're in, especially to that capacity, to that extreme. And now we're seeing where even with this budget, right, the fear of shutting down the government is not enough to warrant stopping it. Right. And so President Trump has failed on that promise. And so when it comes to the actual actions around this budget, what we're seeing is that Congress, for the longest time, for decades, is not worried about the spending. They're not worried about how much the revenue is. Sure, the parties dispute over how much to tax, but they don't worry about cutting the spending. What they do is they justify spending more here, 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 and it just continues on. And there's never one side saying, hey, let's just push down on both sides. Let's do what Thomas Massey said, and let's actually cut it by 1% each year on all forms of government. What state am I in? I'm in South Carolina. So with this budget, what we saw So we saw less than 1% increase in revenue and up 3% for the outlays, for the spending, if you will. The increase, gotta go. I appreciate it. Kevin, if you would hit the follow button and share this out from now on. Help it out. So when it comes to the spending, what we're seeing is in total spending for the 3 largest mandatory programs increased by 4%. Do you guys know what the 3 largest mandatory programs are for the government? Do you guys know what are 3 unconstitutional things that are that we are spending so much money on? I talk about them a lot. It's the entitlements. It's the Social Security, the Medicare, and the Medicaid. Social Security grew by 5%. And it grew. Why did it grow by 5%? Because the increase in both the number of beneficiaries and in the average benefit payment. So they're having to grow. Whenever we talk about Social Security, right? 16 original taxpayers taking money from 16 people, providing it to one, right? So it's hurt many people a little bit in order to provide for one. Now we're at 3 people paying for one person. So you're taking more from each individual to provide for one individual. And now we're still seeing an increase in the number of beneficiaries, right? That's the baby boomers. The baby boomers are now retiring. They're hitting the Social Security age. And because of that, because there was such a large population compared to the other generations, it's a drag on everyone. It's a huge drag on everyone. And in the average benefit payment. So they're paying more to each person who's coming on it because of natural inflation and sorry, that was an incorrect term. Because of inflation and because of natural cost of living increases based on the market. So Social Security is growing because it's a failed system and it needs to be revoked. It needs to be removed. Medicare spending increased by 3% because of increases both in the number of beneficiaries and the amount and cost of services. Again, same thing. More people are getting on it, and it costs more for each person that's on it. It's hurting the population, and instead of actually nipping it in the bud, what government is doing is just making the problem bigger and make it more difficult in order to fix the issue. Medicaid grew by 4%. In the part because new enrollees were added through the expansions of coverages authorized by the Affordable Care Act. Lynn, welcome in. So the 3 big ones, the 3 big entitlement portions of our government budget, which is not constitutional, like I always say, and is growing by 5%, 3%, and 4% respectively. Stefan, welcome in, man. I appreciate you joining in. So it's just disgusting to see the way that this continually grows. There's never Congress. You'll have individuals within Congress coming out and saying, we have to stop with this entitlement spending. Not only is it not in accordance with the tenor of the Constitution, not only is it not a power that was enumerated and delegated to the federal government, not only is it just a bad idea in general, but it is failing the American people, the recipients, and those who are paying in for it. We need to stop stealing from people to provide a shitty service to others. What we need to do is move this down to the state level, allow the states to handle it there. If the states want to run Social Security, if they want to run Medicare, if they want to run Medicaid, they are free to do so within the 10th Amendment of the Bill of Rights or of the Constitution. That's where that line of justification goes. It's not on the federal government. They need to get rid of those. Full market economy of healthcare would help. Absolutely, right? Free market is fantastic. Stefan, welcome. And thank you for the invite and your followers and for tweeting this out. I don't think I got to be able to tweet it. So the actual deficit in August of 2018. So in August, does anyone want to guess? I'll give you this hint. If you guys throw out one number, it's above 100 billion, less than 300 billion. Anyone guess where this line is, what the deficit just of 1 month was? Why do you think the authors left money out of the Constitution? Well, they didn't. 246 billion. Okay. 225 billion. All right. Give it a couple more seconds, allow a couple more guesses to be made. So when it comes to money is actually spoken about in Article 1 of the Constitution. 1417. So the actual number of the deficit for August, just 1 month, was $214 billion. Now, if that was the average, if that was the mean of all the months, right, $214 billion means that at the end of the year, 12 months, you're looking at 2.4 trillion. $2.4 trillion of debt. We are complaining, we are writhing in pain over 21 trillion. And if that was the median, if that was the year, then we'd be adding $2.4 trillion for this year. And we don't have enough outrage. We just accept it. I like Trump, I'm going to accept it. I like Obama, I'm just going to accept it. I like Republicans, I like where they spend the money. Instead of understanding this on principle, it needs to stop. We need to stop blowing out our spending. We need to actually have somebody in there that has an accountant information to go, hey, it's not good to spend in a way that is not bettering the people. It's pushing systems that are not effective. And maybe, just maybe, we should go through and figure out what is actually specified in the Constitution, what is not. We are definitely heading for a global market crash. And depending on who crashes first, if it is America first, that will be, of course, that would be the tsunami that hits the rest of the world. If we go down first, we hit a lot of countries in a major way. So, Brakeman, you know where I live, correct? I actually live in the 4th District of South Carolina, Trey Gowdy's old stomping grounds, if you will. I know about William Timmons. William Timmons is probably the one that's going to be elected come November. He will be looking like he's going to be the next representative of South Carolina 4th District. I'm a huge UFC fan, but I'm not a huge, I haven't been following it. So William Timmons is a young individual. I believe he's either 28 or 32. He has a trust fund that's been backing him, so he's been able to make a little bit more aggressive decisions when it comes to business. He has a yoga studio. He's got a couple other small businesses to collect his money. All right, let me be brutally honest with this. He screwed over the upstate South Carolina. Yeah, $40 per voter is what he spent. He screwed over the upstate of South Carolina because we have Greenville healthcare systems, and he basically passed some legislation that allowed them and another medical facility to come together and to be protected by government. So he screwed over the upstate's healthcare system by allowing two competitors to merge together under the legislation that he helped push, endorse, and enact. He is kind of, I've met with him a couple of times. I've seen him debate. I've seen him debate once or twice live. He was one of our state senators, and now he is obviously running on to be a member of the federal Congress. But I just don't see him providing a good service for the people. I think that in 2020, I think that his reelection is going to be difficult for him. I hope that we would be able to provide an individual that's going to push against him and actually take some good actions and actually provide for the people. Towards the beginning of his campaign, he was definitely a little bit more of the anti-Trump. He was a little more objective. And then towards the end, it was just basically, I need to kiss Trump's ass as much as possible in order to get people to believe me that I am 100% in favor of Trump and his agenda and this, that, and the other. So he seems like a flake. He seems like a fake. He seems like somebody who's disingenuous. Where's Trey going? So Trey is not a fan of politics. He's not a fan of politics in D.C. He's not in favor of my party has to win over the facts. My my party has to win over the narrative. What he is more in favor of is justice. And so Trey Gowdy is going back into the civilian sector. He's not going to be the projected story is not for him to be in politics anymore, but maybe going into being a prosecutor again, which is what he was before he was a member of Congress. I wish Trey Gowdy all the best. I hope that he continues on with the great history that he's led thus far, and allow that to continue to springboard him into the future and to provide great services and to seek out justice where it needs to be sought. That's where the good people go, out of Washington. Yes. And that's a huge issue. That was also one of the fundamental issues around the Judge Kavanaugh situation, was the idea that if the allegation was false, then it would be deterring good people from wanting to be elected or wanting to be nominated or wanting to be involved with politics, because you put yourself under scrutiny. And if accusations are enough, accusations without corroborating evidence is enough to slander your name, to drag your name through the mud, and to destroy your family, to have death threats against you and your members of your family, expecting a good person to come up and step up and to volunteer themselves or to sacrifice their lives isn't going to be the benefit. That's not going to be the result. Right. So what you're going to have is a bunch more disgusting people on both sides of the aisle. You won't have good-hearted people. You won't have people that are conscious about the American populace wanting to run, because they're going to be at their own detriment, not at the betterment. So it's a huge, huge issue. And, that's why I always encourage, whenever we have conversations, Jules, welcome in. Whenever we have conversations, I always advocate, hey, let's have an honest conversation. Let's have an intellectual conversation. Let's challenge each other on the points that we're making, right? If somebody makes a false comment, a false statement, it's not that they are, intentional in being misled. It's just that there's so many stories out there, so many facts out there, so many news narratives out there that are not built on truth, and that should be slowed down or removed. Being accused of being from ISIS. Yes, I am from ISIS. That's my ISIS flag. Kelsey, stop blocking people. Which of the solid blue or red states do you think could flip? Honestly, I think that Texas is going to be susceptible in the next 5 years. 5 to 10 years. I think Texas is going to be susceptible to going towards the red. Hey, thank you for joining in. I appreciate it. I do not want to butcher up your name, but I appreciate you for joining in. So were you Army? Are you an Army veteran? I appreciate you joining in, by the way. I know I've said that like 3 times now. I am honest. I love it. James R. and Kimmy Jong-un are fantastic people, as always. I do love their input, and I love their insight. So I'll have to send them a big thank you for opening your eyes to me and allow you to come in here. And I appreciate that you like this. So I think Texas is susceptible. When it comes from blue states turning red, that's a little bit more of a difficult one. I know sometimes it does seem like Florida is turning blue. I hope that they're going to be turning red here soon. We'll see that. Connecticut's not going to turn. No, Connecticut won't. Connecticut and communism, the alliteration for this example is absolutely true. Daniel Malloy has found a way to tax taxes. So when you pay your taxes, you have to pay a tax on your tax. Even if that tax was paying on the taxes of another tax. So you just have like multiple taxes stacked up on each other. He's really legislated in a fantastic way. So Daniel Malloy, you can thank him because now we have Connecticut, commie Connecticut. I don't see them flipping anytime soon. A lot of people there love it and endorse it. So you're from California. So the comment was, I like to go deep on subjects, especially related to California, as I'm trying to change this blue state voting caucus. Well, I mean, that's good. It's good to be on the battleground state, not in the battleground state, but in the states that need the flipping, and the states that have gone just absolutely hysterical and really lost their grounds on caring about the individual. Ooh, you're in San Francisco area. That's even worse. Oh man. So I applaud you on being able to stand up and fight the fight there, and I hope that you are able to change the hearts and minds of those around you and be able to open up for liberty, open up for smaller government, and everything else. How long do you think it will be till California flips? Probably, if California is going to flip, where I would see California flip is probably like 25, 30 years from now. It's going to be extremely difficult. I think that one of the major pieces that's going to cause California to flip is the entire society to flip on the idea of listening to Hollywood. That's beautiful. That's beautiful that you're willing to fight every day there. That's going to be the big thing, right? 25, 50 years from now is where it's going to be possible. As our society develops, as our research and development grows, as our transportation grows, as being in a certain location is less important, I think that more people will be moving away from California because of the legislation that they have enacted in there. I think that the Feinstein-Pelosi revelations will be a catalyst. Yes. So Feinstein. Well, here's a problem. I don't think the Feinstein necessarily is going to be a big impact anymore. With the DNC not supporting Dianne Feinstein, with them actually removing their endorsement of her because she's not far enough lefty, she's not radical enough, she's not extreme enough. I don't think that she's going to be necessarily a pivotal piece for fundamental movements or for any serious change in the future. With regards to Nancy Pelosi, I think that she's going to be a little bit more of a key figure. She's going to have some changes that she's going to cause just with her position, just with where she is. But I still fail to see how she's going to – I don't think she's going to be able to do anything for cross the aisle. It's just going to be changing people within her own. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Dianne Feinstein, absolutely. The comment was for sure, bro, but the corruption is very deep with her. Absolutely. Dianne Feinstein, one of in recent time, we found that she has been involved either intentionally or without malice and just being ignorant of it. She's been involved with a lot of corruption in the recent times, right? The Chinese spy being there for like 20 years. Not an issue. No one found out about it. It's things like that. The Christine Blasey Ford private email being released. She's being looked at for that. Of course, Dianne Feinstein said that she was not the one to leak it, and her staff was not. But this was not under threat of perjury. This was not under sworn oath. And so, judging off of her actions over this Kavanaugh stuff, then can we really believe her if she's not saying it under oath? It's that idea that we can really utilize their words against them in a beautiful way. But I anticipate a health issue with both of them, probably because California voters, let's be honest, California voters are not going to be voting to change anything. They're just going to keep voting the same way, which is why Maxine Waters has been in for like 33 years now, I think. Have you ever seen Mark Dice interviews? Most Californians are ignorant as F. Probably, yes. Oh, well, I've seen a lot of Californians, and they're not cream of the crop, if you will. True statement, Breakman. I think I mentioned that earlier. I think you may have been commenting or something. Millie Chan, welcome in. How are you doing? And so it's going to be interesting to see the way that those two individuals are being portrayed. It's going to be interesting. The ground made many changes happening in California. Yeah, so here's one of the things that you'll see. You'll see a lot of things that it's whenever you are emotionally tied to something, and I can tell just by talking with you for the short little bit that you have an emotional drive, you have an emotional attachment to a smaller government in whatever capacity that is. if you see something small, what your brain automatically does is build it up into something bigger. So you may be seeing some changes, you may see some groundworks, you may see a couple more people getting involved, and oftentimes what you'll do is that it's subconsciously you're going to attribute that to be a bigger number. You're going to attribute that to be a bigger thing, and it will that just means that it takes longer for it to actually occur than what you may be expecting it. I hope that you're 100% right and that things are changing. We'll see it in 2024. But I trying to be as objective as possible. I think is going to be taking quite a bit longer. Yes. Well, Yale is just as left as California, right? Yale was one of the schools. No, sorry, that was Harvard. Harvard was the school that had, black segregation, black graduation day and everyone else graduation day. So, we'll force the segregation and that somehow is tolerance, although we oppose it from before because when we have segregation, it's bad, except for when we do it, then it's good. It's just this weird, stupid things. Opinion on the college protests about anything and everything. I mean, that's the basis of why they protest. It's about anything and everything. That's why a lot of these college protests get involved. And really, I want to take this page out of Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson was talking about when you want to be a political activist, what you have to do is you have to be able to clean your room. Something so small, something so simple, something so small and simple, and people have a lot of aggression against that. I appreciate that comment, Millie Chan. I did read it. And the basis behind this is if you have this tiny little room, you have this tiny little space, if you can't take care of that, what makes you believe that you can go on and you can take care of society? You can take on these bigger issues. You can take on these multifaceted, multi-layered issues that affect thousands of people if you can't even keep your microcosm, your bedroom clean. And so when it comes to a lot of these college kids that are protesting, a lot of them, I'll go to the populist question afterwards. A lot of these college protests are based on either false news, fake news, vilification and propaganda against individuals, right? How often have we seen that Ben Shapiro has been labeled the alt-right, been labeled a Nazi, been labeled this, that, and the other? And it's like, the dude's a Jew. Like, he's hated by the alt-right and he's hated by actual Nazis. Like, you can't be that disingenuous and expect an honest discussion around that. So we see where people will try to build up the opposite side in order to have these protests. That's been a big, large, fundamental one. We've seen where Antifa has gotten involved and they've actually made protests become more violent, where they're targeting individuals. Those are obviously horrific events. One of those was down there in California. That was Berkeley, UC Berkeley. We saw that with Milo Yiannopoulos when he came in, somebody that I'm not a fan of. Milo Yiannopoulos comes in and they're turning over cars, they're breaking in windows, they're destroying property, and it's not being denounced. So a lot of these college protests that are making it to the news are making it to the news because they need to be denounced, and they're not. It's a huge issue that we're seeing within our colleges across this country. The indoctrination is being effective in creating in these political activists that have not been able to grasp the subject as a whole, that are willing to use mainstream media, quick slogans, quick speaking points. They just aren't well-rounded on the subject to be able to have these discussions. I went down we had March for Our Lives, if everyone remembers that. After the Parkland shooting, we had March for Our Lives go on across the country. Down here in Greenville, South Carolina, I went with my wife to lunch one day and I saw the protest and I was like, we are getting involved. I want to check this out. I want to go in and have conversations. We go down, we're walking along. I walked into CVS, I grabbed a sign. I don't think I have the sign anymore, but I held up a sign and I just gave statistics. And I said between 500,000 and 3 million lives are saved each year in accordance with the CDC study by the use of guns. And then the other statistics, 98% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. And the idea was that more laws will not save them. And I was jailed. I was told by the police that I was not allowed to walk within the protest, that I had to stand on the side, and they actually had a little cage and I was by myself. But and I stood there and I had a lot of conversations with people. You could tell whenever it was a lefty that would walk past and they said, "You can't have an AR." And I was like, "Why can't I have an AR?" Because you just don't need it. I said, "Well, you don't need to speak, but you're able to speak because it's your right." And then you would have other people that were more centrist that were there for the conversation, and they would come in and have these conversations. And I wish that more people would listen to the dialect that we had. But that's the understanding, right? These colleges are pushing out those lefties, right? No one needs an AR-15, and then they walk away because that's all that they have. That's all the information that they've developed, that they've accrued for themselves. And so those college protests are just despicable. The other question that was coming up was, do you think populists can or will be the new norm? I think the populists will always have kind of a niche in the political world. I think that everyone wants to see, hey, look, the public populace wants this, right? They push the democratic stances. I think that democracy is something that a lot of people within their heart and souls, whether they want a big government or a small government, they do want a form of a democracy. They do want democracy. Because even going into fundamental issues like the 17th Amendment, where we took these state representatives in D.C., which was your senators, and we took it from the state representatives to a democratic vote within the state, you have people on both sides of the aisles defending this idea. And so we went from a state representative to a people representative, which is the same thing that the House of Representatives is. So now we have two forms of democracy within our governance. It's a fundamental issue, but at the end of the day, people like that populace. People like having their voices be heard more whenever it's on their side. So I think that populists will always have a special slot, a special crack in the wall of our politics. I just don't see them as being a viable pick, because it's hard to be a populist and to be consistent, right? It's extremely difficult to say, look, I'm going to be off the views of the people, and the people's view changes year in and year out. One year they'll say, look, don't touch my guns. Don't touch my guns. And then the next year they go, you could go ahead and ban bump stocks, right? So you can't be consistent and be a populist. That's where the huge downfall of being a populist would be. Milo Van at Berkeley was at the ending of Crazed Left Reactions. Yes. What's the deal with my flag? It's just hanging there. I don't know that there has to be a deal. It's just hanging there. I'm for being such a small government person, for being somebody that's not a huge nationalist. I am somewhat patriotic. You can call it my downfall if you'd like. I mean, why is it so dirty? It's not. It's actually just supposed to look weathered. It's actually quite new. It's just supposed to look weathered, like our country. Because I'm actually a fan of the weathered country, not of the country of today. The country of today is poop. But while I'm leaving you guys with the country is poop, I am going to have to bid you guys adieu. And I want to say thank you guys all for joining in tonight. Thank you guys for supporting the show, for sharing the show, for getting this out to your friends, for the likes, the retweets, and everything else. So thank you all so much for joining in. I am Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. The next time I'll see you guys is Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. The normal schedule is Tuesday, Friday, Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, hitting on the topics that's going on, bringing this all into the world of today. And then also, of course, I forgot to mention it before. Yes, today is my 1-year anniversary. I am so thankful for not only the support that you guys have given me, but because I have the most amazing and supportive wife ever. The Mrs. Bearded Truth is always a wonderful addition when she comes in yelling from the peanut gallery to get her comments in. And so, of course, thank you to my wife for the wonderful 1 year. And to many more. So thank you guys all once again for joining in. I am Mr. Merker, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. Hope you guys enjoyed your weekend. You guys enjoyed the show tonight, and I will see you guys Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night.